coming up on Bridge City News. Jason Kenney launches what he's calling the most aggressive recovery plan in the country. Plus, the Prime Minister warns against letting our guard down too much with coronavirus, as a new explosion in cases could mean a return to tight restrictions. And the lifting of COVID-19 restrictions in Alberta means Edmonton's former Humboldt Broncos hockey player Ryan Strasnitsky can finally get back to rehab.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Rocher.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. The Lethbridge Police Commission has appointed a new chief of police in a unanimous decision. Shaheen Medizadeh will officially take over the job on August 31st. He takes over from interim police chief Scott Woods, who took over the role of police chief in October of 2019. Medizadeh is currently serving as the RCMP Chief Superintendent for the Central Alberta District, where he oversees 24 detachments. There was a meticulous process for the Police Commission to make sure that they got the right man for the job.
We started off with a list of 20 plus people, and we whittled that down to 9. And then what we did with that 9 is we got the search consulting firm, the headhunters, to find more information out about those 9 people. And then we were able to reduce that list of 9 to around about 4 or 5. And we had Zoom interviews with those 4 or 5 candidates. And eventually got it down to 2, then 1, and this is the selection. I'm pleased that it's over. I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to participate in it. It's an important pick for the city, and I'm glad that it's finally come to a head now, and we have chosen our preferred candidate. And once again, that council has ratified our choice, our selection.
Interim Chief of Police Scott Woods will be returning as Deputy Chief once Medizadeh takes over the job in August. More than 330,000 Albertans have lost their jobs due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and tens of thousands of businesses are struggling to survive, according to the provincial government. That's why the province today announced what it's calling the most aggressive of all the province's recovery plans. Premier Jason Kenney shared his bold and ambitious phase 1 of his plan to get people working right now, while also investing in the long-term recovery of our economy.
Our future is truly at stake. Alberta's government has acted in unprecedented ways to protect people through the worst of the crisis. We've provided some $14 billion in support, more than any other province on a relative basis, including over $500 million for our healthcare system, support for long-term care homes and those who work in them, emergency isolation payments so that sick workers could stay at home, up to $200 million in small business relaunch grants for those businesses that had to close.
The launch of Kenney's Alberta Recovery Plan will create tens of thousands of jobs. It will put $10 billion into infrastructure projects to springboard our economy out of the COVID-19 financial crisis. Kenney says the investments will be for roads, healthcare, schools, and other areas, with expected spin-off benefits to other businesses and the service sector. Meanwhile, small business relaunch grant applications went live online this morning at the Government of Alberta website. Alberta's provincial court plans to resume operations beginning July 6th. According to their website, the provincial court says they're mindful of the need to expand in-person access to the court, while at the same time protecting the health and safety of the public due to COVID-19. Therefore, they will be increasing the number of criminal, family and youth, and civil matters that can be heard in person at base point locations during the pandemic, while stricter health measures will be put into place for physical distancing, wearing of masks, modifying courtrooms and other spaces, and enhanced cleaning. More cases of COVID-19 in Calgary Centre have prompted provincial health officials to change the regional classification from open to watch. According to Alberta Health, more than 60,000 people live in Calgary Centre, and there are 34 active cases there. A spokeswoman says they're all associated with a condo high-rise. A watch is issued when there are at least 10 active cases in a region, and there are more than 50 active cases per 100,000 people. The province says that there were 51.4 cases per 100,000 people in Calgary Centre as of yesterday. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says new federal models show continued progress in suppressing COVID-19, but with significant hotspots. He says the restrictions Canadians have lived with through the spring have worked to get the novel coronavirus under control. But if we let up, Trudeau says the country could still be at risk. A new explosion in cases could mean a return to tight restrictions, he warns, saying that rising COVID-19 numbers in the United States demonstrate the need for continued vigilance north of the border, including keeping physical distances from each other wherever possible.
After a very challenging spring, things are continuing to move in the right direction. We still have some hot spots in some parts of the country, but nationally, the number of cases, hospitalizations, and deaths is declining over time. And that's because Canadians are doing their part. I want to stress, though, that while we're on the right track, the fight against COVID-19 is not over yet. As we start to reopen parts of the economy, we must continue to follow local public health guidelines to keep each other safe. Obviously, we're going to continue to put the safety of Canadians at the very top of our priority list, which is why we have extended the border measures with the United States until July 21st. And we will continue to assess the situation, work with the Americans on what steps need to be taken into the month of August.
The latest COVID-19 hotspots in the country are in parts of Saskatchewan, Montreal, Toronto, and around Windsor, Ontario. But Chief Public Health Officer Dr. Theresa Tam says federal models show the spread of COVID-19 appears under control nationally. She says we are well on our way down the right side of the big first peak. Tam says it will be even more important to maintain physical distancing and good hand washing practices to keep case counts down. Meantime, Tam says that daily briefings by her team will no longer be necessary. She says they'll do them just a couple of times a week, but she adds that if there's an urgent development, that would change. Red Deer RCMP responded to a shooting that happened outside Parkland Mall at around 11:30 this morning. One man was injured and transported to hospital. RCMP are looking for the suspects who are believed to be driving a stolen 2016 white Jeep Cherokee with black rims. There appears to be 3 or 4 males in the vehicle. If you see this vehicle, you are asked to call 911. With Canada Day closing in on us this Wednesday, many of us are wondering what to do, especially since our fireworks display has been canceled. Well, it turns out Taber might be the hot spot in southern Alberta this year. They are planning festivities from sunup to sundown.
We've partnered with a few restaurants in Taber to offer pancake breakfast specials for families. We're doing a scavenger hunt through the park in town, a Where's Wally scavenger hunt. Wally's a beaver, so that'll be fun. We have some yard decorating contests going on, and the fireworks, typically we have them out at Ken McDonald Field and everybody goes there to watch them. But this year we've paid a little more money to get them at the golf course and shot higher in the air so that you can see them from your house. So everyone's encouraged to stay home. All the activities that we have planned are easy to do while social distancing.
And some of you may instead have plans to head to the mountains this July 1st. Waterton Lakes National Park is planning their Canada Day celebration, and this means that there will be an abundance of vehicles trying to make their way into the park. The park says that they're hoping to be able to get in as many people as they can within the COVID-19 guidelines as they monitor traffic levels within the park.
We do on any given year monitor traffic levels as well to make sure that levels are safe in the park. And we will implement traffic limits if we do reach, a capacity limit. Having a set number is tricky because it depends on how visitors are interacting throughout the park. So certain areas might be more busy and certain areas more quiet.
For information on what's open and closed at Waterton Lakes National Park, you can visit the Parks Canada website. Meantime, here in Lethbridge, the Cocoa Vanilla Galactic Cantina has partnered up with the Interfaith Food Bank to put on a pancake breakfast on Canada Day. The owner of Cocoa Vanilla Galactic Cantina, Bradley Whalen, says that it's a great way to get the community out for a good cause and drum up some business for the Galactic Cantina as well.
So we've planned a pancake breakfast for Wednesday morning to run from 8 o'clock until 11 o'clock. Basically, we're going to do kind of by donation. We're doing it in support of the Interfaith Food Bank. They're not able to have their pancake breakfast this year. So it was something that we looked into, the guidelines with the AHS and partnering with them. And, we've kind of navigated it all to make sure we meet the guidelines. Basically, you get 2 pancakes, 2 sausages, something to drink. It's $5 minimum donation, so people can pay whatever they want, but at least $5 we're asking.
The restaurant will also be hosting a cosplay celebration later in the day where they will offer up prizes, free giveaways, and food deals. Sounds like a good time. The lifting of COVID-19 restrictions in Alberta means that former Humboldt Broncos hockey player Ryan Strichnitsky can get back into rehab. He was paralyzed from the chest down 2 years ago in the bus crash in Saskatchewan that killed 16 others. While under lockdown, the 21-year-old has been practicing with the epidural stimulator that he had implanted during spinal surgery in Thailand last fall. He's hoping to improve his range of motion this summer.
Just the basic, get stronger, get more muscle contractions and stuff throughout my whole body, and kind of hopefully get more muscles moving that weren't moving before. So that's my main goal this summer, and kind of hoping to see where it goes.
I think the disruption in care for everyone has been difficult. Being out of routine and being out of sync with what's happening has made it a struggle. But I think that Ryan has done a lot on his own to maintain what he had gained when he was back. That I'm hoping that this will just be a slight bump in the road and he'll be able to continue on without too much regression at all in his therapy.
Well, it's no question that COVID-19 has affected nearly everyone worldwide. But what about the world's poorest populations? Allison Alley with Compassion Canada spoke with BCN's Hal Roberts recently about the effect coronavirus has had on developing countries and specifically those who need to earn a daily living just to keep their families alive.
Many of them are day laborers, which means if they're unable to go out and earn a daily wage, they're unable to put food on their table at night. But beyond that, experts are also talking about the cascading effects of this pandemic. We anticipate hunger may double by the end of the year. We see the pandemic triggering, an increase in preventable diseases like malaria and measles. And really, it could undo more than 10 years of progress towards combating poverty. And so this is a crisis for the world's poor, unlike anything we've ever seen.
Catch that full interview coming up in the second half of our show. Family dynamics can sometimes pose challenges, and as many know, marriage takes a lot of work. Marriage coach Ron Price wrote a book called Play Nice in Your Sandbox at Home. He says communication is vital in a healthy relationship, but so is having fun.
And so one of the problems that people fall into is they forget the importance of having fun in their relationship. When they first meet, that's all they're doing. They're having fun. They're doing things, and they say, "Oh, let's do this forever," and they marry and they still have fun. But over time, and especially when the gaga wears off, life becomes raising the kids and paying the bills.
And you can catch that full interview with marriage coach Ron Price coming up after the business news. Comments on Twitter have cost a member of the Edmonton Eskimos his job. Christian Jones tweeted Saturday that he believed same-sex relationships are wrong. The Eskimos released Jones yesterday, saying they condemn the language that he used. The Canadian Football League said there is no place in the league for commentary that disparages people on the basis of their religion, race, gender, or sexual orientation. Jones, who is from Alabama and previously played for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, apologized in a tweet yesterday following his release. Human Rights Watch says dozens of Canadians left behind after the defeat of the Islamic State terror group in the Middle East deserve more help getting back. They include some who should face justice for their acts abroad, but also an estimated 26 children. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Canada has no diplomats on the ground there, and that limits what this country can do.
As a country, we have always stood up to condemn the horrific actions in the Syrian civil war, the terrible actions by terrorists in the region. We will consistently stand up and defend Canadians and defend citizens' rights to live in safety and in peace.
After months of a high-pressure campaign by the Trudeau government, Iran has sent the flight data recorder from a Ukrainian passenger jet that it mistakenly shot down in January to France. A military prosecutor says the recorder was damaged and that Iran's experts could not acquire the necessary converter because of American sanctions. All 176 people aboard, including 55 Canadian citizens, were killed after Iran shot down the jet, mistaking it for an incoming missile. Iran initially blamed the crash on technical problems and only acknowledged shooting down the plane days later. Meanwhile, Iran has issued an arrest warrant for U.S. President Donald Trump and asked Interpol to put out a red notice arrest request. But the International Police Agency says that it will not consider the request on the grounds that it was a political nature. Iran wants murder and terrorism charges laid against Trump and dozens of others that it believes carried out the U.S. drone strike that killed a top Iranian general in Baghdad. Prime Minister Boris Johnson is calling the COVID-19 pandemic an absolute nightmare for Britain. More than 43,000 people in the UK have died. Johnson is pitching a spending splurge on schools, housing, and infrastructure to get the country back on track. But critics want to know where the money will come from, with Britain facing a deep recession. And turning our attention to the weather now, could this be true? Are we actually facing as much rain as we are seeing all the way up to Canada Day? I will have a full look at weather coming up right after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Here's a look at our weather for this evening in Lethbridge. Well, we are going to see that rain continue through tonight. We could see 10 to 15 millimeters of rain, as a matter of fact. 12 degrees is the overnight low this evening. That rain is going to last into tomorrow as well, with a high of 18 degrees and our overnight low tomorrow evening of 11 degrees. Now, the unfortunate thing is that rain is going to last right through until, you guessed it, Canada Day. 15 degrees is the high on Canada Day under rainy skies. And then look what happens after July 1st. Of course it does. The sun comes out right after the holiday. So 21 degrees is the high expected for Thursday, 26 for Friday under sunny skies. Should be a lovely weekend as well, with a mix of sun and cloud on Saturday, high of 26 and a high of 24 expected for Sunday with a mix of sun and cloud. Now those averages for this time of year, 24 degrees. And of course we're going to see that again after Canada Day, of course, right? 10 degrees is the average low. 34 degrees was our high. That was back in 1984. And our lowest on record was 4 degrees. That was back in 1987. The sun rose this morning, if you could see it behind those clouds, at 5:27 a.m. and our evening sunset 9:43 p.m. behind rainy skies this evening as well. Now here's a look at our national forecast. We could see some scattered showers on the coast tomorrow. Victoria's high 20 degrees, 21 expected in Vancouver, 21 also expected in Edmonton, and Calgary's high 19 degrees, increasing cloud, mix of sun and cloud up in Edmonton, although there could be a slight possibility of some showers tonight and then have it clear up. Now Saskatoon could see some showers tomorrow. 19 is their high. Regina's high 20 degrees. They could see a risk of a thunderstorm. Hot spot definitely Winnipeg, 31 degrees, and it's feeling warmer with that humidex under sunny skies there. A mix of sun and cloud expected in Toronto. 27 is the high expected in Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal. Ottawa could see a thunderstorm there. and a possibility of some scattered showers tomorrow in Montreal. Now, as we get into Atlantic Canada, same thing with the showers and possibility of thunderstorms in Fredericton tomorrow. 23 is the high. 23 also expected in Charlottetown with scattered showers. Periods of rain expected in Halifax with 25 being their high. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, they could see some showers as well there tomorrow for 24 degrees. It's just a rainy country. What can I tell you? There you go. That is your weather. The Cirque du Soleil, whose acrobatic shows have been halted by COVID-19, has filed for creditor protection while it develops a plan to restart its business. The company says it will seek court protection from creditors under the company's Creditors Arrangement Act at a hearing Tuesday at Quebec Superior Court. Cirque du Soleil also announced the termination of approximately 3,400 employees previously furloughed in March. The company added that given that its resident shows in Las Vegas and Orlando are expected to resume before the rest of its shows, the artists and show staff of the resident shows divisions are not affected. Fallen fashion mogul Peter Nygard is trying to prevent the sale of one of his properties, saying an apartment in a warehouse building has been his permanent home since leaving the Bahamas. The Nygard group of companies was placed in receivership last March after creditors sought repayment of a $25 million U.S. loan. Lawyers for receiver ROCHER Advisory Group appeared in court last week to seek approval from a judge to purchase the property. Nygard says in an affidavit that the property has been his home for more than 40 years when he was not living in the Bahamas, and his permanent home for the past year and a half. Several Canadian companies have joined a growing ad boycott on Facebook amid criticism that it's not doing enough to stop racist and violent content. Lululemon, Mountain Equipment Co-op, and other companies such as Coca-Cola, Unilever, Honda, America, and Starbucks in joining the hashtag Stop Hate for Profit boycott. MEC says that it has pulled paid ads from Facebook and Instagram until the end of July, while Lululemon says it's actively engaging with Facebook to seek meaningful change. Some of these companies say that Facebook profits will never be worth promoting hate, bigotry, racism, anti-Semitism, and violence. Facebook said in a statement that it invests billions of dollars each year to keep its community safe, but knows that it has more work to do. And now here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up $200.74 to $15,389. The Dow was up $580.25 to $25,595. The S&P 500 was up $44.19 to $3,053. The Nasdaq was up $116.93 to $9,874. Oil was up $1.13 to $39.62 per barrel. Natural gas was up 14 cents to $1.69. Gold was up 10 cents to $17.72 an ounce. Silver was unchanged at $17.86 an ounce. Wheat is at $240 per metric ton. Barley is at $245. Canola is at $473. And corn is at $228 per metric ton. Live cattle were up 45 cents to 96.48. Feeder cattle were up 90 cents to 133.50. Lean hogs were up 33 cents to 48.45. And the Canadian dollar was down slightly on the day to 73.20 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, the provincial government is cutting business taxes and pumping $10 billion into infrastructure projects to springboard its economy out of the COVID-19 financial crisis. Premier Jason Kenney says the investments will be for roads, healthcare, schools, and in other areas, with expected spin-off benefits to other businesses and the service sector. Kenney says there will also be incentives for high-tech companies and other sector-specific initiatives. Coming up in the second half of our show, Compassion Canada's Allison Alley speaks with BCN's Hal Roberts about the effect coronavirus has had on developing countries. That is coming up right after this short break. Stay with us.
As the dust settles and economies slowly reopen after months of COVID-19 restrictions, those in developing nations are still dealing with rising numbers of coronavirus cases. Compassion Canada is a charitable organization committed to helping children and their families in these developing nations to prosper and live in health during the crisis. Joining me now to talk about it is the President and CEO of Compassion Canada, Allison Alley. Welcome back to BCN, Allison.
Thank you, Hal. It's great to be with you again.
Allison, how has COVID-19 really impacted your group, Compassion Canada?
Yeah, well, Compassion works in 37 countries in low, middle, and high income economies and countries. And this pandemic has impacted every single location we work, right? There's a reason why we call it a virus that knows no borders. And so, not dissimilar to in Canada, government quarantines were put in place in every area we work. Our offices were closed and staff were sent to work from home overnight around the globe. And so our focus since then as global leaders has been how can we come together and adapt and respond to not just the changing needs of kids living in poverty, but the critical and increasing needs that they're facing.
So what hurdles specifically have children and families living in poverty really come up against?
Yeah, so for kids and families living in extreme poverty, everything about COVID-19 is magnified for them. The risk, the fear, the uncertainty, the life and death reality that they face. Because many of the families that we serve have no safety net, right? So their survival is on the line when something like a health or an economic crisis hits. Many of them are day laborers, which means if they're unable to go out and earn a daily wage, they're unable to put food on their table at night. But beyond that, experts are also talking about the cascading effects of this pandemic. We anticipate hunger may double by the end of the year. We see the pandemic triggering, an increase in preventable diseases like malaria and measles. And really, it could undo more than 10 years of progress towards combating poverty. And so this is a crisis for the world's poor, unlike anything we've ever seen.
Allison, have staff members been able to visit the homes of the sponsored kids? And if so, what measures have they taken to really prevent the spread of COVID-19?
Yeah, our program has always been locally led and contextualized with a focus on knowing, loving, and protecting kids based on their unique needs and the unique challenges that they face. But in this season, as you can imagine, our staff and our partners are having to be more creative and adaptive than they've ever had to be in how they go about doing that. But they're getting in front of them. They're visiting their homes when they're able to do that. They're delivering food and hygiene kits. They're making mask and hand sanitizer, educating communities through flyers and digital campaigns. And of course, a critical part of our work right now is trauma counseling and child protection, because when there's crisis in the home and when there's instability, kids are often the ones that are the most impacted as violence in the home increases. So we're working on that as well, of course.
Can you comment on the strain this crisis has had specifically on medical services in some of these developing countries?
Yeah, the countries that we work in, Hal, already have fragile and strained medical and health systems. So as you can imagine, when you add COVID-19 to the picture, it becomes even more critical because they have to choose where to allocate their already limited resources. It's not dissimilar to what we saw during the Ebola epidemic when West African countries had no choice but to really devote their limited resources to battling the deadly disease. But it meant that other important life-saving interventions like basic vaccinations or maternal health were neglected. And that basically led to a rise in maternal deaths. And so it is dire. It's staggering how under-resourced they are and the implication of that. But actually, it's interesting timing because I was just on a call with our National Director of Compassion Ecuador right before talking to you, Hal. And he had talked about how, in addition to all the ways that they're helping kids and families access medical services or give them access to private hospital care if needed, they've also created a new telehealth program. And so they've created this phone number similar to telehealth that we would have, that these kids and families can call to access a network of doctors and practitioners and counselors. But what I love about this is that some of those medical professionals are former sponsored children who have gone through our leadership development program and are now doctors and nurses. So incredible work's being done.
Wow, great success stories. Nice to hear that. Now, are cases of the virus, Allison, increasing or decreasing in some of these developing nations?
Yeah, the spread and the impact of the virus is certainly different everywhere that we work, but it is definitely continuing to increase. Developing countries now account for 3/4 of the new daily cases that are being reported. But of course, we know that with the limitations of testing in those contexts, the numbers are much, much higher. But it is increasing the fastest in Latin America right now, faster than anywhere in the world. We happen to work in Brazil, which, if you're following the news, that's now become one of the new epicenters of the pandemic, right? And they're anticipating that its numbers are going to surpass the United States in the coming weeks. For us, we've got our eye on the fact that it's spreading into the Northeast region, which is where most of the country's impoverished regions are. And it's also moving into indigenous territories in the Amazon, which, as you can imagine, we were just talking about limited medical care. That would be most certainly the case there.
So how about education? Are people able to get out to some of these regions, the far remote regions of the Amazon or maybe in Latin America, and explaining that, social distancing, physical distancing is important, not to spread the virus, the masks and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, that's the challenge. It's education is always a struggle. First of all, in getting to the remote regions, as you said, but even those who have access to education, formal education, are no longer able to go. So for us as an organization, we have been working as it relates to just healthcare and prevention education to provide that in creative ways. We have different social media and digital campaigns. We've been putting flyers up in communities, but we also have been creating videos and FaceTime calls with students who have been preparing, for example, for end of year exams or for different schoolwork. We've ensured to get in front of them and support them in their more formal academic and educational needs as well.
Now, Compassion Canada also has this thing called We Rise as One initiative, helping out in some of these developing countries. Allison, let's chit-chat a bit about that.
Yeah, well, ultimately, we feel like a global crisis warrants a global response. And so our worldwide Compassion family has come together for the first time to launch a global fundraising campaign to help the most critically vulnerable children and families. And so we're inviting exactly that, folks around the globe to join us and to rise as one, to lift up their voice, to give their influence, but also to respond practically to those who so desperately need it. So specifically how we're raising funds to give at-risk children, families, and communities the health and stability they need through hygiene, food, and shelter.
What is in some of these kits actually that has the food and hygiene?
Yeah, so for hygiene, it would include really practical things like hand sanitizer, soap, vitamins, supplements, cleaning supplies, protective masks, and of course, as we talked about education, the tools on how to use it and why it's important. But we also have these food kits that we're handing out. And it's probably worth noting that food security is becoming one of the most prominent and severe risks, not just for the people that we serve, but for those experiencing COVID-19 in these low-income economies. Because as I said, they're unable to make income, which makes them unable to provide food, but also how we're seeing already that global supply chains are starting to break down. When there's food shortages and shortage of supply, we know that the price goes up, which is just magnifying and intensifying the need for these families. So for us, we are providing practical kits that include things like rice and eggs and milk and corn and other non-perishables. While also a large part of our work is on helping pregnant and new moms. And so we ensure that these pregnant and nursing mothers have the nutrition and supplements that they need as well.
They sound fairly helpful. Will Compassion continue to give out the kits after the coronavirus crisis?
Yeah, I mean, this is a short-term relief that we're doing as part of our long-term sustainable development efforts. And so we always focus on the holistic well being of the kids that we serve. We work to grow them spiritually, socially, physically, and cognitively. And therefore, things like hygiene and food and stability are a regular part of what we do. But as we move forward and enter new phases of development, the way that we offer them and how we do it will continue to change based on their unique needs and the opportunities around them.
You know, Allison, even before we've ever heard of COVID-19, your organization was involved in something called holistic child development work. Tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, so that recognizes that we as human beings are whole beings, and we can so often think of poverty as just an economic challenge that requires a financial response. But we, particularly as a faith-based organization, recognize that not dissimilar to how Jesus grew. It says in Luke 2:52 that Jesus grew in wisdom, in stature, in favor with God, and in favor with man. We follow that model and develop kids spiritually, socially, physically, and cognitively so they can really flourish into their full God-given potential and contribute wholly to the community around them.
Let's talk more specifically now about how Compassion Canada works. On your website, you say that we shouldn't respond to poverty by just handing out food and Bibles, correct?
Yeah, we really think that it's important, first of all, to have a long-term model that prioritizes and highlights the local, national people. And so I think the first thing to understand, and I will answer your question more directly, but the first thing is we work only with national offices and partner with local churches who have been there before Compassion, will be there after Compassion, and really know the names and the faces and the needs of their communities. And because of that, they understand that poverty is complex, development is complex, and not dissimilar to how we think about our needs, Hal, the needs of our kids, the needs of our society. They work to address all of those needs as well and say, yeah, there's a physical component, but there's also social, interpersonal, there's family needs, there's community needs. And so they work to grow kids holistically in that context in appropriate ways.
Now we pray that God would bless and support various nonprofits, including your own, which honor him and bring him glory. How can our viewers bless you? What are you specifically needing help with? Is it maybe volunteers?
Yeah, well, first of all, we appreciate your prayer. There's so much need, as you can imagine, and we are facing an incredible amount of cases in our beneficiaries and their families, and of course, are starting to encounter deaths of the kids that we serve or of our frontline partners and volunteers. So pray for them and the impact on their family. But specifically, absolutely, we're always looking for volunteers. And actually, we launched this We Rise as One campaign with our volunteers, which are really close family members of our organization, just last night. And so you can check out different volunteer opportunities on our website, which is compassion.ca.
Yes, for more information, definitely check out that website and continue with the great work around the world. Great job, Allison.
Thank you so much, Hal. Appreciate your time.
Marriage is hard at the best of times, and now with the pressures of the COVID-19 pandemic, some might find it even more difficult. Today's guest is a marriage coach and a court-appointed mediator. Ron Price is also the author of Play Nice in Your Sandbox at Home: How to Enjoy Peaceful Relationships with the Important People in Your Life. Welcome, Ron. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Oh, Jeanette, the pleasure's mine. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Okay, so Ron, that's an interesting book title. What's the significance of this analogy?
Actually, Jeanette, it's the second book in the series, second of three. In 2016, I came out with Play Nice in Your Sandbox at Work. And in all of my books, the play is an acronym, a four-step model to prevent trivial, insignificant, meaningless things from blowing up on you and becoming a conflict. Can I assume you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. I think we all do. Yeah.
Not only were they not a hill to die on, they weren't a hill to get sick on, and yet they're taking over our time, our energy, our lives. So the play is, how do you prevent those from happening at work, at home? And again, in November, I'm coming out with At Church, which is a whole different matter. But how do you prevent conflict? The nice is, how do you resolve conflicts, significant differences that, Jeanette, we're all going to have with other people from time to time? How do you resolve those in a productive manner? So, in the sandbox, I just never grown up, I guess. People ask me, where did I grow up? I say, I'm trying to do it in Farmington, New Mexico. So it's just kind of playful and helping people realize conflict can be prevented at times. It can be resolved when necessary.
And like you said, I mean, whether it's at church or home or at work, we're all human, right? And so we have those interactions daily. And it's a challenge, right? Sometimes.
It's fun, though, isn't it? It's fun.
Absolutely. Now, Ron, you're a court-appointed mediator. Can you share what your experience has been with couples who maybe put their kids first above, I guess, their spouse?
Yeah, they end up divorced. That's and I shouldn't be laughing. That's not funny, but it's incredible how many couples have told me, yeah, we put our kids first. We stopped focusing on the marriage. Jeanette, if you really want to put your kids first, you get some very good, reliable sitters, or you get other couples with kids the age of your kids, and you trade off so that you're going out on regular dates. You're going out and focusing on the marriage because, number one, that's what your kids, they want to be able to come home after they've left and grown up. They want to bring their kids to your home to see both grandparents together. So you want to put the kids first, you want to focus on the kids, you focus on the marriage.
Interesting. And I'm sure that sets a really good example, too, for the kids in the long run.
Oh, absolutely. Point.
Now, most people say that finances are the number one reason for divorce, but you say it's something else, that it's failure to cut the apron strings with your own parents. Please explain that.
We come into a marriage, Jeanette, with certain expectations based largely on how things were in our family of origin. That's all we know, so that's how we assume things should be in our new married home. Well, guess what? Your spouse didn't grow up in your home. At least, I hope not. That's a whole nother topic. They have a different set of expectations. And so one of the challenges in marriage is to carve out not yours or mine, but ours. And you've got to leave mom and dad. You can't be running back to them whenever there's a dust up or a disagreement or whatever. The smart in-laws, when they see you coming under those circumstances, are going to slam that door in your face and say, you go back and fix it, then come visit us. Marriage, you've got to become an us. It's just us. I don't want to say against the world because it's not a negative thing, but no, we're putting a hedge of protection. Nobody's going to tell us what to do. They can give advice if they want, that's fine, but we're making our decisions. We're not doing it our parents' way. We're doing it our way. And if you don't do that, boy, you're just setting yourself up for nonstop trouble.
Right. That's a good one. Now, the marriage flame tends to dwindle over time, unfortunately. What's your advice for a marriage that might have grown stale?
Okay. Actually, Jeanette, can I depress your audience for a moment? That flame that you're talking about, that gaga, euphoric, that lasts 2 years or less.
Oh, wow.
2 years or less.
Depressing.
Biochemically, you cannot sustain that euphoric love. It's supposed to settle in to a more steady, stable, and long-lasting love. And so one of the problems that people fall into is they forget the importance of having fun in their relationship. You know, when they first meet, that's all they're doing. They're having fun. They're doing things, and they say, "Oh, let's do this forever," and they marry, and they still have fun. But over time, and especially when the gaga wears off, life becomes raising the kids and paying the bills. Or is it paying the kids and raising the bills? Whichever. Fun gets pushed to the wayside, and that's a huge mistake. In fact, in my play nice model, the P stands for play, play, play. You've heard the expression, the family that prays together stays together. Okay.
Sure.
That for the theologians. I'm saying the family that plays together, has regular date nights, just as a couple, and fun nights as a family. is going to experience the joy longer, keep the flame, as you said, burning more brightly.
Right. And doesn't it seem that the common courtesies that we extend to strangers sometimes get missed in our own marriage? Where are some of these and why do we neglect them at times?
You know, Jeanette, how much time do we have? Do we have about 3 hours?
No.
But the point is valid. We're at the grocery store and somebody puts groceries in our bag. We say thank you. And they typically say you're welcome. We say please to people, that total strangers that we don't know. But we neglect that at home. I think we just kind of take people for granted to an extent. And when we ask for something, don't just ask, say please. When somebody does something for you, say thank you. When somebody thanks you, say you're welcome. This is not rocket science. This is not earth-shaking. But you know what? Those little things, Jeanette, they do add up over time and help people want to serve more, love more, encourage more. Yeah, remember your P's and T's. I've heard the expression "mind your P's and Q's." I don't know what that means. I don't know what the Q's are. Mind your P's and T's. Your pleases, your thank yous, your welcomes. You'll be glad you did.
Yeah, good advice. Now, in your book, you define marriage as two imperfect people who join together to try to form a perfect union. Can you explain this?
Well, that's what it is. But what's the chances of that, Jeanette? I don't know if you're a betting woman or not, but again, you take two imperfect, hurting individuals who have needs that they're not good at voicing at times. That's a whole nother matter. And they expect the other person to understand and meet those needs nonstop. You're dreaming. You're dreaming. It's not going to happen. Imperfect people cannot create perfect relationships. And especially, as you said in the beginning, under this COVID-19, when we're having more time together, we've got the added stress and the uncertainty and perhaps financial challenges. Yeah, imperfect people, you're going to see the flaws and the faults and the shortcomings in your mate. So if I may, Jeanette, could I cite the L chapter real quickly? I think it fits well here.
Sure.
The L chapter is look for the good. Again, you ask my wife to list Ron's top 10 faults, it might take her 10 seconds, maybe 1 second per fault. You ask her to write down Ron's top 10 good qualities, his positives. Well, depending on the mood, depending if we're in harmony together, it won't take her very long. If we're not in harmony, it might take her a while to think about the good. So force yourself. Look for the good. Look for the good, and your mate, your children, let them know, I really appreciate this about you. Thank you so much. You're going to start seeing more of it, I promise.
That's nice advice. Now, we all know the phrase forgive and forget, of course, but you say that that's unrealistic. Why is that?
Yeah. Jeanette, I don't know about Canada, and I'm looking for an opportunity to say the word oot, because I love the way you folks say oot. In Canada, when you were young, did you hear an expression, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Do you remember what age you found out that was a total lie? Words.
Pretty young.
Yeah. Words can be very hurtful. Well, another expression we've learned from way back is forgive and forget. Jeanette, we can't do it. Now, you're young enough, this won't be a challenge for you, but I ask people my age to think back to their first or second grade teacher. Let me put you on the spot. Can you recall the name of your first or second grade teacher?
Yeah, I can actually.
When's the last time you thought of that person?
It's been a little while.
Thanks.
But yeah.
But look how quickly you were able to access that information.
Yeah.
Our brains are such, God made our brains in such a way we don't forget anything. We may not be able to recall it when we want to. I promise you that one. But every memory, everything that's ever happened to us is in the emotional part of our brain, and something can trigger a memory to bring it right back to the surface with all the power and the pain and the impact. So to say forgive and forget, I might as well say forgive and eat this building. It's not going to happen. The trick, if you will, the challenge, is forgive and move on. Purposely decide, you know what? Nope, I have forgiven that. And if I have thoughts come into my mind, I'm deleting them because I
Right.
have chosen to forgive and
Yeah.
move on.
It's an action, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a decision and an action. Yes, well put.
So, most of us who are married are either trying or have tried to change our spouse, but you say that this is a waste of energy.
Well, Jeanette, I didn't ask you, but are you married, Jeanette?
I am, yes.
Ever tried to change your spouse?
I think everybody's guilty of it a little bit, right? At
I was going to
times.
say, you don't have to answer that. I was watching the Today Show. This is probably last century, last millennium. It was a long time ago. And I was just about to shuttle off and go back to work. And they said, in our next segment, an animal trainer is going to come on and explain how she used animal training techniques to change her husband. And I said, oh, this is going to be good.
Yep.
So I stayed and I watched it. And I can't remember her name. I would give credit if I could. But she said, when we train animals, we look for those behaviors that we like, those behaviors that we want to see more of, and we reward them. We give them food or compliments, praise, what have you. We let them know, yeah, that's good. We see more of it. She said, I started doing that with my husband. She said, when I saw him doing something that I appreciated, I let him know in no uncertain terms, wow, thank you. Man, I like that. Not over the top, come on, but realistic. I appreciate that. And she said, you know what? And he began to change. But then Jeanette, she looked right in the camera and she said, oh, was it I who had changed?
Probably.
Jeanette, I did a dance in my office. It was her. She changed because when your mate knows you're trying to change them, the walls of defense are going to go right up. You know that. We all know that. So when you stop trying to change and you look for the good and let them know you appreciate it, they'll change on their own, which is far, far better than coercive change. You
mentioned an acronym HALT, H-A-L-T. Maybe tell us about that.
Okay. Yeah, it's universal that we are not always at our best. We like to think we are, but we're not. So if you're hungry, and trust me, you're not going to be in total control of your emotions, your thoughts, whatever, because your emphasis is on your appetite at the moment, your stomach. If you're angry, you're not at your best. You have left your thinking brain, you're in your emotional brain. You got to be careful. If you're feeling lonely or maybe your needs aren't being met, if you're tired, so hungry, angry, lonely, tired, that's I don't say a bad state to be in. We get there from time to time, but it's a horrible state in which to try to communicate with another human being, especially your spouse. Because if you're under that condition, you're tense, you're irritable, you'll take things the wrong way. That's when you need to know the secret of calling a timeout the correct way. Jeanette, did you know there's a right way to call a timeout and a wrong way to call a timeout?
I'm sure there is, but I don't know the secret ingredient there.
Well, may I share it with your audience?
Sure.
Thank you. I was hoping you'd say yes.
Of course.
We have a part of our brain that thinks right in the front, the frontal lobe. It's the command center of the brain, if you will. Our thoughts, reason, logic come from that part of the brain. We also have the limbic system, which is the emotional part of the brain. And what can happen to us as human beings, Jeanette, is we can get so upset about something, so agitated, so irritated, we will leave the thinking part of our brain, get smack dab in that emotional brain, and when that happens, all bets are off. So at that time, you have to call a timeout. You have to announce to the other person, right now, I can't do it. I'm too upset. If we try to talk now, I'm going to say something or do something I don't say or do. Time out. But Jeanette, here's the key. You've got to announce the time in. In other words, if I say to my wife, time out, and I storm out, I've made it worse, not better, because I've left her wondering, well, is he coming back? Is he rejecting me? Is he rejecting marriage? She doesn't know. So I need to say one of two things. I need to say, I need a timeout, or I think we need a timeout. How about if we get back together in a half an hour, pick this up at 2 o'clock, let's talk about this after dinner. So I'm letting her know I'm rejecting the argument. I'm not rejecting her
That's right.
or the marriage. And two real keys, by the way. I can say, I need a timeout, or I think I need a timeout. God forbid I ever tell my wife, I think you need a timeout. I think
That's not going to go over
I'll
so
find
well.
out. Yeah, no, that won't go over well.
Yeah, no, that is really fantastic advice. Probably something that we can all use, whether we're married or not.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Jeanette. If I may, when I wrote Play Nice in Your Sandbox at Work, people think, well, I don't work, so I don't need that. 100%, 100% of the skills that I teach in the At Work book are applicable. Probably 80% of the At Home book are applicable at work. And, probably 50 or 60% of the At Church book, they're relationship skills. They're going to be applicable at home and at work. Because, like I think you said it earlier, relationships are relationships. We got to learn how to get along.
Exactly. Ron, thank you so very much for joining us today. We really enjoyed having you on our show.
Jeanette, I'm just sorry it's come to an end. I've enjoyed it immensely. Thank you so much.
Ron Price is the author of Play Nice in Your Sandbox at Home. From all of us here at BCN, thank you for watching.